Hi everyone, it's John from RFM Calc, and today I'm talking about Weebly. So Weebly is a US-based software as a service web platform, originally launched in 2007. So the original purpose, according to the founders, was really to create a service that made it easy for anyone to build a personalized website. So back then, getting online was certainly more difficult. A lot of services sprang up with that same USP of trying to make it really, really easy for anyone to come on and build a website. You can see from this handy marketing banner here that it's suitable for both men and women. I suppose the intention of that is, which is kind of an interesting approach. You don't see that on many sites, but good to know. And it's certainly a popular platform. So according to their website, it powers millions of sites worldwide. And according to BuiltWith, there's currently around 1 million sites online live using the service, which is certainly a substantial number. In 2016, Weebly began to focus more on its e-commerce functionality, and indeed in 2018 it was acquired by payment provider Square for a substantial sum, and that's why you can see we've got the e-commerce by Square part of the logo here. Square, in terms of the overall company, Square has since been renamed to Block, confusingly, but Square is still the name of the payment platform, and that's not the only confusing part of branding, which I'll get into. I think pricing wise, it's always worth looking at this. So the overall kind of story here is it's very cheap. So there is a free plan, which is genuinely free. You do have to use Square's payment gateway, which I'll come on to. But generally creating a site is pretty straightforward. And then obviously for online stores, you can see you need the Pro, the Business, or the Business Plus. So they're the same plans, but there's just an extra one for online stores with a bit more functionality, and a few added benefits like Google Ads credit and so on. So pricing wise, it's certainly pitched at that lower end, below Shopify, so around that kind of big cartel, Squarespace, confusingly with Square as well. Squarespace is obviously completely different. Around that kind of level, so really that entry level, but you do get a reasonable amount of functionality when you sign up. So you've got things like obviously coupon cards and gift cards and reviews and so on. So there's quite a lot you can do with it for not a huge amount of cost, which is certainly what they're aiming for, I'm sure. So in terms of the sign up process, it was actually probably the most convoluted sign up process I've had for any e-commerce platform that I've been looking into while I've been doing this series of videos. So because Weebly is now part of Square, what they've tried to do is amalgamate the sign up process into the main Square payment platform sign up process. So it's the same login here that you use for the two. It's actually really confusing though. They try and give you a shortened down version to sign up for Weebly, but then you still need to use the same login or at least a Square account to sign up for the Square payment gateway, which you have to have to use Square as a platform. Which you could understand from a business point of view, but it actually makes the whole thing very convoluted, and actually it wouldn't let me do it, and I ended up going round and round in circles. And in order to set my demo store up, I actually had to create my Square payment account under a different login to my Weebly account, because it just wouldn't work. And this is me, obviously I've signed up for a lot of things in my time. I know how to sign up for services. It just isn't very straightforward at all. So I think considering it's 3 years on from the purchase, the way it's been kind of amalgamated and the branding and so on hasn't really moved on to the level you'd expect. It's quite confusing. But nonetheless, it's still a popular platform, as I say, and like any good e-commerce platform, you can of course integrate with RFM Calc. So today I'm going to talk about the platform as a whole and give a little demo of how it works. I'm then going to talk about how to export orders as a CSV file. We'll take a deep dive into the structure of that CSV file that Weebly exports in terms of understanding all the columns and the overall architecture of the file. And I'll then demo how to upload that file into RFM Calc and schedule the generation of your advanced e-commerce reports. So, as a first step, let's have a look at my Weebly demo store. So this is the store I've created. So you can see I'm on the Weebly domain, but it's called Square Online, and we've got the Square logo here. So immediately you've got that kind of slight confusion really over the branding, which, as I say, after 3 years, you really would have expected to be a bit more consistent. And I'll come on, there's actually more examples of that as you work through as well. So this is your overall dashboard that gives you a kind of a little summary of where you're up to. You've got your own kind of temporary URL there, and various other kind of basic overview stats really, I suppose, in terms of sales and page views. In terms of the website, you've got this edit site functionality, which actually opens the editor for the online view. So it's not kind of a theme-based system, so you can't go through, at least not on the free plan, and kind of choose a completely different theme. But what you can do, I would say relatively intuitively, is just go through and edit certain elements. So I can go in, I can change the logo really easily. I can go through and change on the main banner, for example. I can change the headline text just by clicking on it and say, I don't know, living moments that matter now, because now is the time, and so on. So that's kind of nice and intuitive. You can also edit the image. So one kind of cool feature is you can then I can zoom out a bit so it's not so zoomed in. I can improve the readability by changing the color really easily. So there's quite some nice intuitive features, I would say, that are obviously a part of their main web platform, not kind of e-commerce specific, but obviously makes it easier from an e-commerce point of view to manage the design of your store as well. And then things like you can customize the layout and color, and you've got featured items down here. In the header as well, you can look at the navigation, for example. So that works relatively easily as well. So you can drag and change the order. So if I want my top products, which is the category I've created, to appear above shop all, I can just drag it in there. Although I've indented it now, so it'll appear below home. So it's not quite as straightforward as you should maybe think, but it is certainly doable. It's pretty intuitive. That's just my poor mouse skills, in fairness there. So you can see I've moved the order of the categories there really easily. So basically, yeah, I think the editor, it's not massively complex. There's not a huge amount of functionality. Like I say, you can't just come in and pick a whole new theme, but everything you need to edit really is fairly easy to edit. You can also do the same for example, your product pages. So I've set up a few test products here, and you can go in this way through this system here and change the content on the page using this and the layout and so on. So, there's a bit of functionality there. You can see powered by Square, not Weebly at the bottom again for the branding. But yeah, I would say from an editor point of view, it's relatively straightforward. Not the best I've seen, but certainly not the worst, and fairly intuitive. So I can publish my changes there. And then I can just go back and exit the editor relatively easily back to my main dashboard. So you've also got things like, obviously you can set up your own domain that you want to use rather than this temporary domain. You've got a few kind of site preferences here in terms of the title, in terms of your icon and so on. Cookie consent options too. And then in terms of product creation, so items are listed under items rather than products, which is fine. So you can see here I've created a few kind of test items, which is relatively straightforward. One thing I would say, just to note at this stage, is that Weebly, sorry, I get confused there whether I should call it Weebly or Square Online. I'll stick with Weebly for the purposes of this video. It doesn't allow you to put through free orders in the sense that there's no offline payment gateway. What you can do though is you can set prices to 0 for products, and you can have 100% discount codes as well, which is what I've done to demonstrate today. But in terms of actually creating items, it's pretty straightforward. So you've got a few different types here that you can create. That it's just a title. You can add images really easily. You can add the price, visibility. It's all the kind of standard options that you need. Variations are relatively straightforward. So you can add variations here. So I could go large. Regular is always there for you. And then you can set your price and use different SKUs and stock for each one. One thing I did find quite bizarre actually is the stock allocation on Weebly. Really, really confusing and slow. So if I click stock here, well, first of all, let's save the product, which I can't because I've not set a title, although that's not a particularly helpful error message. So let me go back to an existing product, which will demonstrate this more easily. It is a touch slow as well, I've got to be honest. Come on, Weebly. Gosh, that really is slow. Let's try it, items again. Okay, here we go. So let's go to my free Apple. So you've got your stock information here. So if I want to change that, you've got your inventory here. So if I click on this to change stock, it opens this, even though it's already saved, this quite convoluted process, and it can be really, really slow. So if I add stock to the product, let's say inventory recount, it was previously 100, I've actually got 200 of this product, and click update stock. Fairness, that was fairly quick, but quite often it's really, really slow in terms of actually updating the stock. It seems to use a different system for that, so that's just something to be aware of. One thing I did like, actually, which is actually quite useless, but if I go to images here, it will automatically suggest images for you for a product. So if I put in beer, you can see it's added some beer images there. One thing I noticed is it does have a wide selection of alcoholic drinks in this functionality. So we've got gin, tequila, vodka. So I mean, ultimately, this is useless for e-commerce because obviously you want to put a picture of your own product. But it's quite a nice feature that it will pull through suggested images for you as kind of a nice little add-on. And you'll see previously I set up my free Apple product. So if I just type Apple, you get an apple there. So, ultimately it's useless because you'll obviously, if you're selling in e-commerce, you want products of your actual item, pictures of your actual item, I should say. But it's quite it's one nice feature I thought I could mention. So, the product setup is fine. It's relatively intuitive, I would say, apart from the stock system, which just seems to work in a bit of a strange way. And then it is quite slow as well on the back end quite often. Could be a popular time, I guess, for Weebly at the moment, which is a shame. So you end up having to kind of manually force it through. Category-wise, it's quite easy to assign products to a category, so you can do that when you create them. And then in terms of merchandising, you have got the option to drag and drop here, just to change the order things appear in the category. So that's really important. All e-commerce platforms really should have that option. Some don't, some make it quite difficult to find, but here, kind of changing the order of products in the category is relatively straightforward. You've also got further options here. So I think gift cards you need to upgrade to get. You've got orders, which I'll come back to. And in terms of fulfillment, you've got options for shipping, obviously, in terms of setting that up. So I can put in my shipping profile here. Marketing, there's a few options again, but really you need to kind of upgrade to access those. In terms of reporting, there's a little bit of basic reporting. But again, to get that, you have to upgrade. So you can't see anything on the free plan. But obviously, you don't get the level, even on the paid plans, you obviously don't get the level of reporting you get with RFM Calc. And then there's a few other kind of settings in terms of integrating with Facebook shops and so on as well. So I think overall what I would say is it's fairly basic. Obviously I'm on the free plan, there are more options on the paid plan, but it's definitely intended to be simple, not have too many options. And I think it works pretty well in terms of being able to set up your store, add products. There are some quirks, like I mentioned, with the stock system, which is very, very slow and works in a strange way. But other than that, it's relatively straightforward, I think, to set up your site and products. So let's now just have a look at the order screen. So this is the main order screen, and you can see I've put through a few test orders here. Just to say, I did touch on this previously, but in terms of payment methods, I'll just show this briefly. Obviously, you have to have Square to use a Weebly store or a Square Online, whatever they're branding it as now, store. So I've had to set that up, and like I say, that was very convoluted, even though it should be possible under the same login. It just wouldn't let me, so I ended up with two separate logins, one for Square as the payment provider and one for Weebly/Square Online as the e-commerce provider. So that's connected, and then PayPal is the only other option, but to use that you have to upgrade as well. There's no other payment gateway options available, which is unfortunate because obviously people like to add different gateways, but you can understand, look, Square have taken it over, they want to push their gateway solely, so you can understand the logic behind that, but it does make it quite restrictive for the user. So going back to orders, this is the order screen, which is relatively straightforward. It's fairly intuitive, so you can change the status of an order just by clicking in here, and then we can go mark as shipped, like that, and then that's shipped. So there's not many statuses, it's kind of pending or shipped. You can see here you've got all the information here in terms of fulfillment details, so the customer details, shipping method. You've got a bit of history here in terms of what changed on the order. It is really, really basic, but it does kind of give you just about everything you need. You can see here this product is free, so I was able to put that through for testing. I think I do have another example here where it's got a value, but I used a 100% discount code. So that's another way you can test Weebly as well. So like I say, there's no offline payment method, which is a shame. It would definitely be better if they offered you that for testing. But in the meantime, you can put through zero price orders, which is something you can't do on Squarespace, for example. So that is certainly appreciated to enable me to test anyway. But as you can see, really, really basic, but functional, I would say. But not a lot of options. So the next step is now to export the orders as a CSV file. So I'll be honest, given how basic Weebly is and the lack of functionality, I wasn't actually expecting there to be a CSV export option, certainly not on the free plan. But the good news is there is. So all you need to do is go up here and click Export Orders. There's a couple of options here. So you've got All Orders, Standard Report, Export CSV File, and then you just click Export. And what that will do is actually queue it, so it won't push it straight to the browser. So in theory, that should mean that even if you've got a big file size and a big data set of orders, there shouldn't be any issues exporting it. They'll do that in the background, and then they'll send you an email when the file is ready. And the email looks like this. So let me just expand this slightly just to make it a bit more readable. So you can see again the branding isn't consistent. So this one's come from Square Online with a different kind of blue background. So it's no mention of Weebly at all. Which again you'd think after kind of 3 years since the purchase and the takeover that the branding would have become more consistent, but it hasn't, which is strange, I would say. And you can see obviously you've got the blocking that I mentioned before, which is now the parent company of the Square payment platform, which was also called Square but then renamed to Block, confusingly. So yeah, the branding is kind of all over the place, to be honest, in terms of consistency. But for the purposes of today, obviously that's not a problem. You can see you get this email and it gives you this warning, which obviously doesn't apply to exporting CSV orders, and that's more for imports. But you've got a nice button there just to download your CSV export. So you click that takes you straight to a download link, and then you've got the file. So now we've got the file, let's have a look what it looks like. So here's a copy of the CSV file. So obviously what I've done is I've just saved this in Excel just to make it a bit more readable. So just running through the overall structure, I think the first thing to note is that the orders run oldest to newest. So a lot of e-commerce platforms run newest to oldest. A lot of other e-commerce platforms also export oldest to newest. Obviously either's fine for RFM Calc. But it's also, good to be aware either way of that. The order numbers here, so this isn't an order number that's, I think, kind of consistently increases based on your store. This looks like an overall order number based on orders going through the Weebly platform. Either that or it's just completely random because it doesn't kind of increment just for your store as you might expect. The date field is interesting. So it exports in this really weird format of year, then month, then day. So this is such an unusual date format that Excel doesn't actually have it built in. So I had to change this to a text field and then paste them back in basically from the CSV to accurately represent this. So that's something to be aware of. I don't know why they've gone for that format. It's quite an unusual way, even in the US, to format a date, particularly with the slashes. So RFM Calc can handle that as well, no problem, but again, it's good to be aware of. You've then got the overall status in terms of shipped or pending, the currency. Now, all these columns here will be zero because all the orders I put through was zero, but total is the overall cost of the order, which is the one we want to look at, really. Moving across, you've then got a breakdown of the products, shipping information here in terms of address, first name, last name, email, which we'll need as well for RFM Calc. You've then got the billing columns. So because I wasn't actually paying for the orders, there's no billing information populated, but that's where it would appear. It's basically the same as the shipping fields. So they're available as well. You've then got the product information. So like a lot of stores and systems, Weebly exports on a multi-line CSV basis. So you've got this top line with all the core order information in, and then subsequent lines tied together with this the same order ID then show the product information. So different e-commerce platforms do this in different ways. Sometimes the first item on the order will be on that top line, sometimes it's underneath. Obviously in this case Weebly just has the core order information on the top line. Then for the products, that core order information is blank. As you'll see, we've got no shipping or delivery information. But the product information is then populated in terms of the SKU, the name of the product, the quantity ordered, if it's taxable, the variation that you've ordered, and so on. You can pass through order notes when placing an order as well. On Weebly, so that passes through to the CSV automatically, as does the coupon code. So you can see on my final order, my most recent order at the bottom here, I used the Test 100 coupon code, which is 100% discount, which is then obviously fed through to the CSV as well, which is useful because you can then build custom reports around coupon code usage. So overall, I would say all the information is in there. It's not the neatest CSV. It's not kind of the most well thought out CSV I've seen. Looking at this across a lot of different e-commerce platforms, but the key information is there, and there's no issue at all importing this into RFM Calc. So now we understand the CSV, let's demonstrate how to import it and generate our reports. So let's head over to my RFM Calc account. So you can see I've got all my test projects here. Let's just create another one, nice and easy. So we'll call this Test Weebly. There we go. So the currency is fine, that's GBP. Now for the order date, because they export the date in such a weird format, the default is actually fine, but I would recommend using the forced US date interpretation here, just because it is such a strange format that they use, that just forcing the US date interpretation will just make sure that at RFM Calc, we're always interpreting that column correctly for you. The date ordering, as I mentioned, it runs oldest to newest, but auto detect is fine. And then it's a comma delimited file, which obviously most CSV files are. We do now have the option on RFM Calc for different delimiters as well, just for other systems. Occasionally you will come across a system that doesn't use a comma, but comma is obviously fine here. And then I don't need to copy any settings from another project, so we'll just save the project. And now that's created, let's schedule our report. So all I'm going to do is just upload my raw CSV file here. So obviously I saved a slightly different version for Excel. This is the original raw file. And we'll just upload that now. And then it's just a case of mapping the columns. So for the order ID, if we look back, that's called order hash. Date is obviously date, which we've got the project settings to make sure we're interpreting correctly. Currency code is currency. So this isn't essential because obviously all my orders are in GBP, but what this means is that if you have orders in multiple currencies, as long as you've got that properly formatted currency code, we will convert them to your base project currency at the prevailing exchange rate when we run the report. And that means you're then getting an accurate overall picture for lifetime value and so on, which is really, really useful. So for order value, you've got a few options here in terms of subtotal. I would go for total. Obviously, it's slightly difficult to demonstrate here because they're all zero, but it was just the easiest way to kind of set up the demo store and put through orders, unfortunately. But total is the right column to use. You can trust me on that one. In terms of order status, so that's here. We've got this status column. So this isn't needed at all for RFM Calc, but the reason we include this is because it allows you to filter out orders by a particular status. So we've got this order status exclusion list here. So if I wanted to, for example, exclude orders that were still pending and only include orders that were shipped, I could add pending here, and you can comma separate a list of different statuses, and that would automatically exclude them from the report. Now, for customer ID, there isn't an internal customer ID assigned to the customer because obviously there's no registration process. It's all effectively a guest checkout. So that's fine. A lot of e-commerce platforms are like that. So what we recommend as the best identifier is email. Now, because obviously these have come through as free orders, they have a shipping email. They don't have a billing email, but that's no problem. We can just, in fact, I'm not even sure it passes through a billing email at all. Yeah, I think you've just got billing address details. So it will always be shipping email, which is great. So that's nice and easy. So we'll just set that as well in the customer ID. And then we've got these additional fields here for customer email, customer phone. I think there's a shipping phone column. First name and last name are separated on Weebly, which is great. So we can separate those as different columns as well. And is there a shipping company? There's not a shipping company column, which is fine. We don't need that. So these fields aren't essential. All this means is in various places in the report, what we'll do is we'll pull through the customer information into certain tables, just to kind of demonstrate maybe your top 10 customers who haven't purchased in the last 6 months. That's one of the standard reports that we generate. So that's all that's used for. So it's not essential, but if you want to populate that data, then it's useful to select those fields there. Finally, you can add custom columns if your RFM Calc report plan supports it. So there's a few little things you could put in here that you might want to report on. So for example, if we scroll across, we can have a look at obviously the location if you've got multiple locations. Coupon is a nice easy one. So what this will do is generate reports based on the coupon code the customer's used. So we'll split down and we'll say, okay, if a coupon code is X, then what's the lifetime value? What's the average time to the second order? Things like that, all based around that custom column. So obviously the great thing, and I say this on every video with RFM Calc, is that you can of course add more columns to the CSV yourself with custom data before you upload it, and then we can generate data and reports around that, which is really a cool feature. And then that's pretty much it. So like I say, it's a really simple file. It's not the best structured file I've seen, but everything we need for RFM Calc is in there. I'll then just add a little report name here. So we'll call it Test Weebly 1. You've got the option here to anonymize customer data. If you don't want any real names and emails appearing in the report, you can anonymize it here, and we'll just basically switch those out for you for fake pretend details. Obviously, we don't need to here because it's all pretend data anyway. And then finally, there's just this tick box here, which is really useful. So this allows you to overwrite the default project column mapping. So all these column mappings that I've set here, I can just tick that box and they'll be saved against the project. So next time I come and schedule a report, they'll already be pre-selected for me, which is obviously a massive time saver. So yeah, that's it. We just save the mappings. And that's it. Now the report is scheduled. In a few minutes, I'll get an email that's been generated, and that's it. Everything's done. So today we've spoken about, just to recap, Weebly as a platform, a little bit of history about it. We've then talked about the platform itself in terms of a demo, in terms of running through how it works. We've then gone through how to export orders as a CSV file and then how to import them into RFM Calc and generate a report. So hopefully that's been useful. Thanks for watching. Really appreciate it. Obviously, if you've got any questions, feel free to drop us a line on the RFM Calc site. But if not, look forward to seeing you on the next video. Thanks, everyone.